Hello, everyone, and welcome back to USTA Florida's Here to Serve podcast. My name is Laura Bowen, and I'm the Executive Director at USTA Florida. It's the month of August, and we all know that means back to school. And today we have one of my favorite topics with two of my favorite guests to talk about, and that's high school tennis. Joining me today is Cameron Wood. Cameron is USTA Florida's grants officer. Welcome back to the podcast, Cameron.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. Great to be back.
And we also have superstar Danielle Gooding, who's the director of community tennis for USTA Florida. Welcome back to the podcast, Danielle.
Thank you, Laura. Great subject.
Love this topic. I talked a little bit about it on my last podcast, but I'm glad we're devoting a whole hour to it. Since both of you are returning to the podcast, I'd like to start maybe by having each of you share your story about how you got involved in tennis and maybe what connection you have specifically to the high school tennis world. And Danielle, why don't I start with you?
Great. Thank you, Laura. Well, tennis has been part of my life probably from 5 years old till now. Um, I was also a high school player, college player, and started working at the USTA national office in 1998. And spent about 18 to 19 years there managing the pro circuit. And then found my way to you, Laura, at the Florida section when I moved down to Orlando and am now the director of community tennis, as you mentioned. And in terms of high school tennis and my life, I do have a high school player in my family, my daughter, Chloe. But we also, professionally in my team, community team, we do a lot with high schools and schools in general. So
Excellent. So, a lot of hats. Danielle has a lot of hats. She wears the parent hat, the community tennis hat. So, we're really grateful to have your expertise, Danielle.
thanks.
So, Cameron, your turn. What brought you to tennis, and how do you interact with high school tennis at the section?
Yes, so unlike Danielle, I'm actually quite new to tennis. I came across this opportunity looking for new work and knew that a passion of mine was grants or foundational work, working in the community. And so I came across a job opportunity at USTA Florida. And through there, the love for tennis is so loud and clear at USTA. And so we had staff that got me really involved. Jason Gilbert, our youth director, was a great coach, and I'd have to give him kudos, a great coach. He really inspired something inside of me that really has made me really passionate about tennis and wanted to be involved in it. We started doing Monday night tennis at our office, which has really also kind of continued to inspire myself, which actually led to me now training some of the people in my own home. So I have my partner that's learning tennis with alongside me. So the tennis fever is alive in this household, and is so excited to be part of this organization now. And so I've been working with high schools on the grant side. So schools I've worked with, some like Freeport Senior High School, Madison County High School, Mass Academy, some just examples of schools I've worked with, just helping them to find opportunities to grow their programs, grow tennis in their schools, get kids involved in tennis. So that kind of looked like, providing support through the grant application to request funds, helping them to pick out equipment or helping them get through the equipment grant process. So those are just some ways that we've been working with tennis, high schools and involved in tennis in high schools on the foundation side, and in my role as grants officer.
All right. Well, shout out also, I want to give an extra shout out to Jason Gilbert and Amy Barnhart on our team because they really, if you come work for us, there is a very high chance that within the first week or two, you will be on a tennis court learning tennis and having fun at the
Yes.
same time. So I know that's what happened to you, Cameron, and happy
100%.
to see that that it carried through to your partner and to your family at home.
I appreciate it.
All right, so let's start with schools who already have tennis teams. Okay, I want to talk about them first. So, Cameron, while you're already on the hot seat there, we'll keep you there. Can you talk a little bit about the resources we offer on the grant side to help offset some of the costs that schools might incur when they are having a team?
Yes, I'd be happy to dive into that. So some of the resources we provide here at the foundation are grant opportunities. So we have 3 different grant programs. We have equipment grants, which can provide such equipment as balls, rackets, nets. So those are just some examples of things that people or tennis teams can get from our equipment grant. And also we have a program support grant. So if you're looking to start a new team, I know we'll talk about this a little bit later, more detail. But if you're looking to start a new team, we provide funding for on-court instruction. So you can help pay for coaches to provide instruction for tennis teams. So that's something I don't think that we're utilizing right now and hoping to expand. Another thing that I want to mention I don't see being utilized often is if you have children that are in wheelchairs, we have wheelchair grants. So you can start involving kids that were in wheelchairs into tennis in your high school. So just some ideas that we can explore and resources that we provide here at the foundation that I would love to see people start utilizing more.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned wheelchair. We don't talk about it enough that wheelchair participants can play in anything that an able-bodied participant
Yes.
could play in. They don't need to be have a separate team or separate practices. That essentially the only difference is two bounces. So you can certainly open your tennis team to wheelchair participants and players. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Cameron. Danielle, I want to talk to you a little bit about the resources and training that we offer to high school tennis coaches to help them manage their teams. I know coaching high school is maybe a little bit different than just, being an ordinary community coach. There's some other things you need to know. So can you talk a little bit about what we offer there?
Yeah, certainly. So, as a section, the Florida section has been involved with hosting tons of trainings throughout the year, mostly for the community, for anyone who's interested in being a coach at, let's say, the entry level, and then progress to maybe orange and green ball. Um, and that's something that we're going to continue this fall, but at the same time, focus on more of a high school aspect to it. So we're going to host some trainings throughout the state that will involve, that will focus mostly on building a roster. What are the drills that you can have during your season? Um, what's the lineup that you want to have during competition? Some of those basics that a coach would need to have to plan out the season. Talk about just areas of play that they can focus on around them locally. And I know that we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But some of the things that they may not think are good resources for themselves as a coach, educating them on some of the organizations that are involved with tennis so that they themselves can request grants that Cameron mentioned. And it's never too early. School just started this week, so it's never too early to start planning and meeting with anyone who may be interested in trying out for a team.
That's a great point, and I love that we're doing that this fall. So please stay tuned because we'll have some of those trainings up on our website, and we'll make sure we have a link in this podcast so that those of you who are interested in coaching high school tennis can find those trainings easily. All right, we've talked a lot about the need to provide play opportunities to students who do not make the team. How can USTA Florida work with the schools and maybe even the local parks to provide team play opportunities outside of the high school tennis season? And Danielle, why don't I stick with you for this one? And then Cameron,
Sure.
you can add anything that you have.
Well, I think in Florida, we're so fortunate to have so many places to play tennis, and we have the weather behind us as a benefit. So, I think the connection needs to be made between the schools and the parks, and even local facilities that have tennis. Um, a lot of facilities don't know when tryouts are, or the schools don't necessarily promote tryouts beyond their school communication. So I think it's important that promotion of both tryouts, both our resources and also facility programs needs to be a little more broader in reach. So that once a facility knows that a tryout is going to take place, they themselves can maybe even attend, be present, offer information to the parents who are there, usually at the tryouts, provide information to the coaches be ready on hand when decisions are made about who's going to make the team, and be ready to accept those kids as, hey, I'm sorry you didn't make the team, but guess what? I have a wonderful program that I would love to see you. You obviously have the interest. I would love to see you come after school, and then we can work towards you progressing and hopefully making the team next year. So it's just that tie in connecting all those players, all those characters in the play, to be speaking to one another and to know what's happening. And I think USTA Florida can help with that, whether it's using our social platforms, whether it's just being in communication with school administrators and also coaches. I think there's a way that we can do this. We may not get it right the first time around, but I know that we can start and establish this form of communication and progress towards the future years to make it a constant thing that happens every year.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And sometimes we hear about this maybe a little late in the game, like in spring after tryouts has happened. So I'm glad we're doing the podcast now. I'm putting this information out there. So maybe we can start early in the game and make those connections. Cameron, you talked a little bit about the grants earlier. How can those grants also work maybe to help provide those play opportunities outside of the high school tennis season?
Yes, so as I mentioned before, really just providing that equipment. So if you're looking to provide equipment for your program, we have up to $2,500 you can receive equipment, and we work to get that equipment that is needed. But also really that on-court instruction is so important, I think, being able to pay for that. So creating a budget and being able to have that. Also even marketing efforts. So if you're looking to market any of these programs that you're looking to get out into the community and more people involved, those funds are able to provide marketing opportunities for yourself. But I think it's important to talk about it because I love the things that Danielle brought up, and that discussion's really just starting to happen around USTA Florida and this support around high school tennis. It's making me very excited because I'm new to this world, and just seeing some of the great work that's being done by high schools. I think it's just very exciting, the opportunity that we're trying to create here at USTA Florida. And I know there's going to be exciting things, maybe a high school grant down the road, something we talk about might be on a future podcast down the road. But I just think it's exciting that we're thinking of ways that we can better support high schools and ultimately drive our mission to grow the game of tennis. And that's what it is about at the end of the day. And so, yeah.
Awesome. And we can feel your enthusiasm. So let's talk about schools that don't currently have a team. So we've covered those that have a team. We've covered the kids that don't make the team and want to play out of season. But I really want to talk about schools that maybe don't have a team right now. Um, Danielle, what types of things do schools maybe need to think about this fall if they want to maybe plan to have a team this spring?
I want to start with the perception that a coach needs to be somebody involved with tennis.
Mm.
I think that's the biggest hurdle because it's not a true perspective. I think we've all seen coaches from different sports take on coaching a new sport, and it's just the coaching aspect that they bring to the table. And then in terms of the actual expertise in the sport, that can be acquired via consultants, via a parent, via a facility provider that's local, volunteering their time. So I think there are ways that we can educate school administrators, athletic directors onto how they can start a program, even though they feel they may not have the right resources, right? And so aside from equipment, I think it's the manpower and letting them know that how we can help them connect with those experts.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Cameron, if a school is starting a team, what type of information do they need to be prepared to have if they want to apply for grants, and when can they apply?
All right, so the most important things to consider when applying for a grant, we have requirements, and that is that you must be a public school. So if you're a public school, show them proof of that, but also being safe play approved. If you're working with youth, that's a requirement. And we have to see proof of that in order to allow a grant to go through, but also being a USTA organizational member. So those are just some of the main requirements in order for you to get through our application process, but just being mindful of the things that are considered in an application. So what's your need? Why do you need this money, and how are you going to spend this money? We really want to see that. What kind of impact are you going to have? What are your goals for this program? And how are you going to measure those goals? And so those are some of the things we want to see. But also, how are you going to sustain this tennis program beyond USTA funding? And what are ways that we can support those efforts beyond the program that you're trying to run and propose? So those are just some of the things to consider when completing your application, questions you want to ask yourself. So yeah, and then some required documentation, just because this is a little bit more difficult and unique with schools. But just being mindful that we look at having financial documents, 990. This may not be obtainable at a high school level, but just knowing that that's something we do require. But also filling out a program budget. What does that look like for you? And forgot to mention earlier resources that we have available. I myself am a resource here at USTA Florida Foundation. I don't know, I did not mention that earlier, but you have me as a tool and resource throughout your entire grant application process. We want to see people thrive. We want to give out the money to help grow the game of tennis, and especially on a high school level. We have a strong belief here that tennis starts with the youth. If we can get a racket in kids' hands at an earlier age, the more likely they are to stick through the game of tennis. So that's what we are here to do, and we want to help you along the way as much as we can. So please use me to your advantage and as a resource to help you through this process at any time.
Yeah, and I think our fall grant cycle goes through October 31st. So if you are
Yes.
interested in potentially starting a program in the spring, it would be great to reach out to Cameron prior to that date. The sooner the better. And like you said, he's a great resource to walk you through the process, even maybe be able to provide you with some samples, which I think we do also have on the foundation website. So, again, if this is even a twinkle in your eye that you think you might want to start a high school tennis team, whether you're a parent or an administrator, please reach out to us because Danielle and Cameron are just excellent, excellent resources, and I know they'd love to help you.
I just wanted to add, because we understand the urgency of getting funding to high schools, we also ensure that when we follow an expedited process, when we see an application that comes in from a high school, we kind of tend to expedite that process because we get that question a lot, because it can be a long process to go through a grant application, but we ensure and prioritize those high school applications that do come in. So I just want people to be aware that don't be discouraged, apply as soon as possible, and we will go through that as quickly as we can.
Awesome. Danielle, I'd like to pick your parent brain for just a minute.
Okay.
Why is tennis a good option for students in high school? And what can parents do to support more high school tennis play?
Sure. I think a lot of students, players, and even some parents don't realize how healthy tennis is for not just high school, but for the rest of your life. It's a sport of a lifetime. We say that a lot in the tennis world, but it is true. You can play this till you are 90 some years old. Um, and that aspect of health and wellness, I think, is very important, obviously, to parents. But it is something that we, as parents for high schoolers, especially who wake up super early, have the whole day sitting in classes. I look for that fitness level at the end of the day for my child. Because I certainly I know that she's going to have tons of homework after that, so that's important to me. And I would want parents to consider that when they are thinking of a sport, because this is a sport that they can eventually play in college and then afterwards as with their children as a parent when they become one.
And I
Um,
I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, just a, a little follow-up question is,
yeah,
obviously you have a daughter who plays, and, I'm a big proponent of women playing sports. So, as a parent of a daughter or of a girl in particular, what benefit does tennis bring to the table of having your daughter play?
thank you. I think that's a great question. Sports to me has always been part of my life. Whether it was my friends, whether it was our neighbors. Everyone did sports in my neighborhood, and it kept us out of trouble. I didn't think about that at the time. It was just what we did. But now looking at what's happening, to the world and the social platforms that we all have, that's probably 2 to 3 hours that they're not on those social platforms. So that's important to me. I do feel as if there are some leadership qualities that you can take away with tennis. You're alone on the court. It is really up to you to be accountable of your actions there on the court. But then when you're together with a team, um, I think there are opportunities for players as they get older in high school to become the captain or to become the manager of the team, and that is just another aspect that some students don't think about.
It's great. And, I love having your insights as both a parent and, obviously a USTA Florida proponent and just a tennis. And you're such a great tennis parent. So if any parents out there want good advice and guidance on how to be a good tennis parent, Danielle is definitely a good contact for that as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
So last question for each of you. What else do you think USTA Florida and the USTA Florida Section Foundation can do to help more team tennis play at the high school level? So Cameron, I'll start with you and then Danielle, you can bring us home.
Awesome. Well, I'm already kind of starting to see it. The synergy is there. The foundation and the section are really starting to work together to bridge the gap to be able to improve and grow the game of tennis at a high school level. So what I think I'd love to see is a special grant one day for high school specifically, a process that aligns better with their season, so we can provide better support, and also just a process that's easier for high schools. We don't want to make this a long, complicated process like most grants usually are. We want to make this obtainable and easy for you. So I think that we are really starting to head in a really great direction, and start doing things that really are going to meet the needs of high school tennis teams, and possibly even see more, give opportunity for kids. So we've had conversations, Laura, about seeing JV teams for tennis. So if you have a varsity team, well, let's start a JV team, again, using those grant funds to pay for a coach, pay for the equipment. Do we eventually one day provide a grant for some of the clothing, whether it be tennis shoes, because that's some things that we've seen in requests. So taking a look at some of the requests that we have received in the past and knowing what our limitations are, well, what can we do differently moving forward that will truly meet the need of these high school tennis teams? So it's not, oh, we can't do that, so I guess we're not going to have a team.
Yeah.
No, we want to say, we can do this, so you're going to have a team this year. So I think that those conversations are really starting to happen. It's just very exciting, and I think great things are coming ahead.
Oh, I can't wait to see. All right, Danielle, bring us home. What else
Yeah.
do you think we can do here?
I think along the same lines of having conversations that are starting, making sure the school administrators are aware of the trainings that are taking place, and in fact, some of them may even take place at high schools. Making sure that not only is that information out there, but that we're inviting teachers to come and be part of them. Sometimes an invitation goes a long way. Everyone's super busy, lots of information going through teachers' emails. So inviting them, making them aware that we're here for them. And then also, I think using our social platforms to just promote high school tennis, starting this early. I know how quickly the fall season is going to go through, and we just want to make sure that everyone is ready. Um, Maybe even providing a timeline for potential coaches to say, okay, you can start training in September, October, November, and even start thinking about what the season's going to look like in December. And then come January, you're ready to go, and we're right here to help you. So just putting that thought in their mind this early,
Yeah.
I think will help them be prepared.
Yeah, I agree. I think putting the pieces together, offering those resources and, maybe a clearer way and just doing everything that we possibly can to get more students playing. Thank you both for your time, your expertise, your energy around this topic. Very, very grateful for the work that you're doing and everything that you do for the section. So thank you for being on today.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Laura.
Laura.
Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
For those of you listening to the audio only version of this podcast, please be sure to check out USTA Florida's YouTube channel where you can see the full video version. And of course, for all episodes of the Here to Serve podcast, including upcoming topics and dates, please check out USTAFlorida.com/here to serve. One more note on today's podcast. This podcast is in memory of Lori Martin. Lori has been a tireless advocate for high school tennis. She passed away earlier this year. She has been my mentor over the last 2 years when it comes to growing high school tennis. And I would just like to say thank you to Lori. And for those of you who would like to contribute to Lori's Memorial Fund at Xavier College Prep, where she was a high school coach for many, many years, you can do that by going to www.xcp.org/giving and donate in Lori's memory. But Lori, thank you for all that you've done for me and for high school tennis. You've been a champion for the entire country, and we miss you dearly. Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.